And I can start by talking a little bit about Dome9 and what it is and what it's not.
Okay.
So the closest analogy that I normally do with people is the cloud is sort of like a house where you can add things to it at any time. So you can start with a house with just one room, but then you can add to a couple of bedrooms later. You can add doors to those bedrooms. You can add windows to your bedrooms. It's basically like a data center, of course, that you can continuously add and change all the time. And people love that. People take advantage of that, and cloud is changing. It changes all the time. Some people make changes every minute. Some people make changes every day. But it's basically like a structure that it's changing and being modified all the time. So we normally offer our regular CloudGuard gateways, which is just like our appliances. And I usually equate that to having a video camera inside of that house. And you can put a video camera on your entrance. You can put a video camera on the kitchen. You can put a video camera on your bedroom, and you can see what's happening inside. But what if somebody added 3 bedrooms in the back and you didn't know about it? And they added a bunch of beds, and now they're running a crack house in the back of your house. And nobody because people can make changes to the house all the time. They can add windows, they can add doors. And sometimes, even if you have cameras and you're recording what's going in and out of the front door, or you're recording who is coming in and out of the main bedroom, because that's where you have your stuff, somebody can be doing some changes that you are not aware of. So there was a need for something to look not just at the traffic that's going in and out of the cloud, or even traffic that's moving inside of the cloud from one part or the other. There's a need for auditing and checking what is happening with the cloud itself. How is the cloud being configured? What are the changes that are being done? Who is making those changes? Are those changes fully compliant with all the regulations that we have? If we're adding doors and windows, do those doors and windows comply with all the regulations that our doors and windows should comply with? If somebody's adding rooms, do I know about those rooms? Do I know what's running in those rooms? And that is why we bought the Dome9 a couple of months ago. The main idea was, with our appliances, is again, they're like video cameras. We can film what's going in the places where the cameras are, but we want to also make sure that we look at the cloud as a whole, everything that's covered by our accounts, to make sure that somebody's making a change or not making a change. I am recording the presentation, so what I can do is, if there's any part that you miss from the beginning, I can also send you a copy of the recording, and you'll be able to see this as well before you fully go in. But I'm gonna stay just a few seconds on the very first screen. What I did is I just logged in using my web browser to the main page of the Dome9 product. And what we have on that main page is a dashboard. And at the very top, I have a listing of all the cloud accounts that I have registered with Dome9. In this particular demo, I have 3 AWS accounts registered. I have 1 Azure account registered as well, and I have 1 Google account. And the whole idea is that it doesn't matter whether you have 1 AWS account or you have 300 AWS accounts, 500 Azure accounts, a couple of hundred Google accounts. You can actually connect all of those to Dome9 and have Dome9 look at all your configurations in all your accounts and tell you whether you're fully compliant and whether everything is configured the way that you want it to. So once we connect to those accounts, the first thing that Dome9 does is a little inventory. So that is the very next line that you see in the dashboard, is basically just a listing of all the assets that we see in the cloud, all the instances that we see in AWS, all the load balancers, all the RDSs, if we have any sort of database service enabled, amount of Redshift nodes, if we have that, the number of Azure VMs, if we have some Azure stuff, the number of Google VMs, if we have Google. We also give you a little counter of all the network security groups that we can see. And in our house analogy, the network security groups are the equivalent of the doors and the windows, right? If Checkpoint, normally the appliances are the video camera that lets us see what's going in and out of the doors. On cloud, those doors and those windows and the locks on those doors and those windows are the security groups that come built in with the cloud. Now, if you only have 1 or 2 security groups, or even 10 or 20, it's not a big deal. But we have customers that have 1.5 million instances in AWS, and they have literally hundreds and hundreds of security groups that are configured. And it is completely unrealistic to believe that even a team of 5 or 10 people can be monitoring all those instances and all those security groups all the time to make sure that somebody didn't go in and make a change that is not allowed, or a change that makes something not compliant anymore. So again, the very first thing that happens when we register an account or a group of accounts into Dome9 is Dome9 goes in and does an inventory of everything that it sees in that account. And that includes not only the instances, load balancers, and the security groups, but also checks to see how they're configured. And we do that for 2 reasons. Number one, we want to report back to the customer how exposed the cloud is, how open your resources are. So do you have 3 rooms instead of 1? Is one of those rooms in the back have a window that's wide open to the world and you don't know about it? So we basically do an auditing of everything that we see. We report back to the user. And if you tell us what the house should be compliant with, like those windows need to be compliant with the NIST, or they need to be FedRAMP compliant, we can also check and make sure that everything that we see and is configured in accordance with that. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the first module. And I can also wait a few minutes if you still don't have visibility, because now is when things are going to start. Okay, great. So you see the main dashboard?
Yep, I see it. Now, would we have to make Dome9 aware of our AWS accounts and our Azure accounts? How is that?
Okay, we are an auditing tool. So there's 2 things that we look for. We look at how open and exposed your cloud is, and I'll show you how that works. And we'll tell you whether you're fully compliant with the cloud regulations that you choose to check for. To do that, we need to be able to interrogate AWS. We need to ask AWS or Azure or whatever your cloud is, hey, how many VMs are in this account? How are those VMs configured? How many security groups do you have in the account? How are those security groups configured? So we can then build an exposure or risk matrix for you. Now, we never look at your Dome9, never looks at your traffic. That is what the CloudGuard appliances and instances do. That's a different product. CloudGuard only looks at configuration. If you have databases, we never see the data that's inside your databases. If you have Linux VMs, we never look inside of the Linux VMs. We never see the packets on the network, but we will see that you have Linux VMs. We will see the instance ID of those VMs. We can see whether they're running or not running, and we can see how they're configured. Do they have a public IP associated with them? Do they have a network security group associated with them? How is that network security group configured? And that's what we see. We do not keep any of that data. We do not do anything with it other than show it to you and run reports against that data. But we do need to find out that information so we can tell you, hey, one of the windows in the back room is open and anybody can just climb into it. And I'm going to show you exactly what is it that we can see. We don't have any more rights than you do. When you register an account with Dome9, what you're basically doing is saying, I want you to be able to audit my Dome9 account, my AWS account, either read-only or read-write. If you do it read-only and we see something wrong, we alert you. If you do it read-write, there you have some options and we can fix things for you automatically if you let us do that. But again, it's up to you. It's your choice. So I'm going to go into network security, which is the first module. We have 4 modules in Dome9. The first 2 that I'm going to talk about are the most popular. So I'm going to start with the network security module and with a utility called Clarity. So when I hit network security, I'm going to get a list of all the networks that I have. So I can see my Google, my Azure, my AWS, my staging accounts, my production accounts. So I'm going to go here and click on production and I'm going to pick a region, Oregon, for example. And in here, you can immediately see that I can see all the VPCs that I have in my Oregon region and how they are peered or connected to one another. I may have some that are not connected to anything, like these ones down here. I may even see VPCs that are not part of my network, but I have some relationship to. I cannot see inside of those VPCs because I don't have any access to those accounts. But if your account can see them, we can usually see them as well from the outside. So they will show them as little blocks like this. Okay, but if this is your account, all these VPCs are part of your AWS account, we can actually click on any of these and say, I want you to do an analysis of how exposed this part of my network is. And then we show you a diagram that looks like this. Now, I'm going to go really quickly and explain what this is. Left to right, this is a schematic, a graphical schematic of how exposed your cloud is to the world. What you see right here on the left-hand side, where it says external zone, is these are all the networks that you're allowing into your cloud right now. Well, this is not your cloud, this is my cloud, but if this were your schematic, everything that's listed here is every network that has access to your account. When you do a quick view of that list, you can immediately see, okay, yes, I know that network, all these networks are fine, but you may see, wait a minute, why is this network having access to my account? I don't know what that network is. You can click on that network and immediately see the loop to exactly what part of your account is being granted access to that particular thing. And even more important, you may see a bubble that says this, Internet All Access. If you have an Internet All Access in this list, it means that there are parts of your account that are fully open to the entire Internet on at least one. So what do? That's why we have this second column in here. This column, external zone, again, is a listing of all the networks that you're allowing into your cloud today or at this moment in time. This second, and we call these columns swim lanes, because if this were a pool, it would be like where the swimmers go on each lane. This swim lane right here is called DMC. And everything we put in this column is things that we see that are fully open to the internet. So we have two things. We have a load balancer. We can see the load balancer icon, and LB is part of the name. And we see an instance. So it is perfectly possible that you have load balancers that are open to the entire internet. That is what load balancers do, usually. You put a public IP address on a load balancer, and traffic from the internet hits it and goes into some internal resource that has a public-facing application, right? But what is this? We have something in here that is not a load balancer, and I can click on it and see that this is actually a database instance. Now, why is one of my database instances fully open to the entire internet? Well, that's a good question. And that is one of the things that Dome9 lets you do. It lets you very quickly see things that are fully open to the internet that you either did not know were fully open, or you didn't realize how open they were. So I'm going to zoom in a little more, and I'm going to talk a little bit about these little numbers that you see here. Every time we see something, we also see what that item is related to. So we can tell you if this is open to the internet, and we have a little number here, the little number tells us how many things inside of your cloud are open to the internet because this is open to the internet. In this particular case, we only see a number 1. So that means that this is open to the entire internet, but the only thing affected by this particular opening is this one account. If we see something like this number 6, it means that we have 6 items inside of the cloud that are behind this and are affected. So if this were fully open to the internet, 6 more items behind it will also be open to the internet, because this is like a gateway to those other items. So the reason we put these little numbers is if you see a number 1 here, but if this is number 10, then we have 10 items that are open to the cloud because of this item, and only 1 on this item. So we start by whatever has the biggest number, because that's the one that is exposing the most amount of cloud objects to the outside. Okay. So we found out, we clicked in here, we try to find out what this is. This is the only thing that's exposed to the internet, but it's exposed to the entire internet. That's why it's listed on the DMC column. So by clicking on it, we get this little window. It tells me this is my instance. It's a database instance. And these are the rules that are open to the internet right now. I can see I have a TCP FTP open, but this rule right here in red, that's the one that's open to the entire world. So I have an SSH open, wide open to the world. And I'm going to go ahead and dig into this a little bit, but I'm going to finish talking about the classifications in here and what they mean. Okay, this column that says partially open means anything that is in this column is open to the internet, but not all the internet, just maybe one or two networks. And I can click on them, and immediately I see highlighted the networks that this item is open to. So this is not open to the entire internet, but it's open to these networks that are highlighted over here. If we are on effectively internal, it means that we're not open to the internet, but there's something in here that could make this be open to the internet very easily. And by clicking on it, it tells me I can see that this has a rule that says web is open to the entire internet, but there's no public IP associated with this. So that means that if somebody puts a public IP to this at any point, then because of this rule, anybody on the web would be able to connect to it. The reason we put this is because even though these are not open to the internet today, we want you to look at them and make sure that there's nothing in the configuration that should be wide open. Because if somebody does do a small change, that configuration could expose that to the internet very easily. Okay, finally, we have the internal zone. Anything that we have listed here in the internal zone is things that are on our cloud that are only able to connect to other things inside of the cloud. So none of this here is open to the internet. This is where I want most of my things to be. So in most cases, I will see a few things on the DMZ, a few things on partially open, a few things on effectively internal, but then the big bulk of what my objects are should be here on the internal zone. Okay, so I'm going to show how I can dig in. I'm clicking on this one.
Hey, Gus, quick question before you continue.
Yes.
Are those swim lanes, are they built in automatically, or are they something that the user can create, or is it all of the above?
This is automatically defined, and it's a snapshot in time. So if I run this report 10 minutes from now and somebody made some changes, somebody opened something to the internet, then that item would be moved over to DMZ. If somebody closed this all access to the internet, then this would be moved perhaps to effectively internal. But the categories are always the same. So the categories are predefined. What changes is what we show you in there. This is what's open right now. And I'm going to go as to how that can be useful in an ongoing manner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, not a problem. So really quickly, I see this instance is fully open to the internet, so I'm going to go ahead and click on it and find out a little bit more about it. And again, we can drill down. So I can see what my instance ID is. I can see what the instance type is. I can see that it's actually running. I can see the region. I can see basically who the owner of the instance is. And in here, I can actually see my rules for access. And I can notice that there's actually two security groups that are associated with that instance. My regular DB server security group that says that SQL is open, but somebody attached the second security group called default, and that is where those SSH open to the entire internet and FTP are. So if I have Dome9 logged in as read write, I can click on this little X right here, and I can detach this security group from this instance. So I'm not destroying the security group. I'm not destroying the database server instance. I am unlinking them by doing this, so nobody can get to this database server anymore from the entire internet over port 22, because this rule is no longer associated with this database server. Now, this is nice because very quickly I can go in, find out what something is, and quickly detach some access right that should not be here, whether it's a public IP address that should not be attached to an instance, or a security group that's giving access that it shouldn't have. But the nice thing is that while this is manual, you of course don't want to have to be doing this all the time and going in and checking, hey, is this open? Is this not open? What do I have in this lane? What do I have in that lane? You can actually tell Dome9, I want once you have everything where it's supposed to be, all the things that should have access to the entire internet, all my load balancers are here, everything else is on the internal, I can tell Dome9, keep it this way. And then Dome9 will continuously check all these things. And if it sees something that moves to the DMC that shouldn't be, it will revert it and put it right back to where it belongs. So if somebody came in and added this, and I had that protection set up, Dome9 would see that and undo it. So somebody that's not allowed to put an SSH rule that's open to the world will try to do it once, and we will block it, and it will try to do it again, and we'll block it again. And then eventually they will realize, hey, I have to ask for permission, and we'll reach out to the compliance, security, or administrative group and say, oh, I really need this SSH access because I need to be able to work from my house or whatever. And then you, the decision maker, can say, okay, I'm going to allow that. I can take my boundary check off. I can allow this change to be made. And then I can reset my boundaries and say, okay, this is now the new state where I want to keep my network going from now on. So we can put sort of like little bumper guides and say, stay within these lanes. This is what the approved configurations are. If you make configurations that break this, then you can revert back to the way we were before. So that would be the visibility tool. I'm going to talk a little bit about compliance now. One of the things that makes us the most popular is people that have networks, of course, have compliance regulations that are tied to those networks. It can be FISMA, it can be NIST, it can be FedRAMP, it can be HIPAA, it can be PCI, GDPR. There's a lot. All industries have a set of compliance rules. And when you get Dome9, we give you a list of compliance rules already pre-built for cloud. So you can check if your cloud is CIS compliant, if it's GDPR compliant, if it's NIST 853 compliant, if it's FedRAMP compliant. You can find all those tests on part of the pre-built tables that we have. You can add to those and take away from those. So if there are tests here that you don't care about, you can take HIPAA out of here. You can perhaps take GDPR out if it's not what you want. You may want to keep best practices, but even better, you can grab any of these and you can add tests to this that you believe should be done in your cloud that may not be part of the regular NIST or the regular FedRAMP certification, for example. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run one of these. So I'm going to select NIST 800, and I'm going to say run the assessment, and it's asking me which cloud account do I want to run this on. I'm going to say AWS production, and I'm going to say run. So now we're going to go and we're going to use all the rules that we see here, and we're going to compare everything that is on the AWS production network to those rules. And then I'm going to give you a dashboard that tells you how compliant you are. So this tells me that this network is 66% compliant with NIST. It shows where the problem assets are. And in here, where it says results, it's showing me a list of everything that failed the compliance testing. So I can go rule by rule. For example, S3 buckets need to be encrypted, for example. And I can hit expand. And this will tell me I found 62 S3 buckets. 62 were relevant to this rule. 61 were found to be non-compliant. And it will proceed to give me a list of everything that it found that is not compliant with the regulation. From here, I can say, oh, I know what this is. This is just temporary. This doesn't need to be compliant because it's going to be destroyed tomorrow. So I can exclude it from future checks. But I can also come in here and do remediation of all the items that are listed here in order to make them compliant the way that I want. Now, this is great as a tool to run, maybe a couple of weeks before you're going to be audited, maybe once a quarter, once a month. But the real power of Dome9 is that we can do continuous compliance. So I can tell Dome9, okay, I want to see how compliant I am with FedRAMP. And once I am fully 100% compliant with FedRAMP because I went through this process and I make sure that everything was fixed, I can tell Dome9, I want to stay 100% compliant with FedRAMP from now on. So every time anybody makes a change in the cloud, and changes get made every hour, every day, every week, every month, we're automatically going to test those changes and make sure that they are FedRAMP compliant. If they're not FedRAMP compliant, then we send you a notice that says, hey, somebody did something that broke your compliance. This is what got changed. This is the rule that it's violating. But we also give you one more thing. We have something called cloud bots. And what cloud bots do is they automate remediation. So if something is not compliant, you can say, if you find something that somebody does that is not compliant, I want you to run this cloud bot to fix it. So we not only will see that it's not compliant, we will start a task that will make it compliant if it needs to be. And that is the real power behind Dome9. Without that, we're a really good auditing tool. We are a great thing for spot checking. You can run us, a monthly, quarterly, right before an audit, and we can make sure that you're going to be passing the audit the way that you want to, because we're going to show you what is not compliant. But if you have continuous compliance, we stop that drift that normally happens. Once you're at your golden state, when people start making changes, we can make sure that those changes are also going to be compliant once they're saved to the cloud. Okay, so that is the network security and the visibility of how exposed our cloud systems are. And this is the compliance and governance, and it includes both spot checks and continuous compliance. Now, I talked a little bit about the rules, right? We give you a bunch of pre-built rules for different tests, but you may have rules of your own. So for example, in Social Security Administration, we want everything that is a database server to be tagged, not only as a database server, but we want a tagging that says how sensitive the information stored in that server is. And we want somebody to put a tag that says security of the server is either low, medium, or high. How do we build that rule? We let you do that. So I'm going to go here into Playground, and we have something called a rule builder. So what a rule builder does is you could build these rules if you know things like Python or any sort of programming language, but a lot of people don't. So we did this tile-based rule builder for you. So let's say that we want to tag all our instances. Yeah, sorry, is there a question or are we good? Okay.
We're good, we're good.
Okay, so let's say I want to create a rule that looks at all my instances and make sure they have a tag that says the data in here for security reasons is low security, medium, or high. So I'm going to say when my instances in AWS, they should have a tag. And that tag with their key value should equal security level. And I'm going to, oops, I got to spell that correctly, security level. So I'm going to add that. And the actual value of that tag should be, let's see, where is it? Should be an array that could be low, a parameter, medium, or high. And I'm going to add this, and I'm going to close my parentheses, and now I have my rule right here. An instance should have tags with the key security level and the value of low, medium, or high. I have a little button here to test that rule against my network. So I do test, and I immediately go out and I look at all my instances, and I found 98 instances. 98 were relevant to this, but 98 were found non-compliant. Of course, because I just made this rule, so I don't have anything tagged as security level, low, medium, or high. But the whole idea is that we allow you to build rules fairly easily. The language of the rule once built looks a lot like English. So you can either grab or take a look at all the rules that we give you built into the system, and you can change them. You can copy them and change them any way that you want to, or you can use the little tile-based model to automatically build rules using the tiles and add them to either a rule check that you run all the time, or a separate rule that has just things, rules and regulations that Social Security wants to keep compliant with. So these are not industry or government regulations. These are internal rules that the agency wants to enforce in the cloud. And just like we can do continuous compliance with the government-wide federal rules, we can do continuous compliance with the specific best practice rules that apply just to the agency. Okay, so that was network security and that was network compliance. Now I'm going to talk about the third module, and it's called Magellan. Now Magellan is a visualizing tool. So before doing this, I'm going to show you something real quick. I'm going to show you what logs in the cloud normally look like. If you start looking at the flow logs in AWS and guard duty logs and things like that, you're going to find a lot of stuff that looks like this. Sometimes you may know what things are. Like, of course, some of these are source and destination addresses. I'm fine with that. This looks like an interface, but a lot of people don't always know what everything is, right? They would love to have something like this that tells you, okay, this is the version of the flow log. This is the account number that this log belongs to. This is the actual interface of the that is actually seeing this data. This is my source IP, my destination IP, my source port, so forth and so on. So it's kind of nice to have some sort of like a dictionary that tells me this is this and this is that. Even better, something that can recognize by looking at the log, hey, this is web traffic, or more specifically, this may be a Lambda function that's being fired up from this. The fact that you need like a little dictionary to find out what your log means is what guided us to building something like Magellan. What Magellan is the capability to run reports against your logs in the cloud. But we take those logs, we massage them, we add information to them as to what everything means, and then we visualize the result for you. So I'm going to run a report in Magellan, a report that says, for example, I want to see anything that has accepted traffic from a malicious IP. In here is how far back I'm going to look. Right now it says 1 hour. Let's say I'm going to do 7 days because I want to see logs for the last 7 days, and I'm going to say run. So now what Dome9 is doing is it's connecting to AWS. It's looking at the flow logs and guard duty logs for the last 7 days. And it's looking specifically for any malicious IP that may have been in contact with the cloud. And boom, I found 3. And it has talked to 1 to 3, like 10 items inside of my cloud. People ask me, how do I know what IPs are malicious in my logs? We know them because Dome9 is connected to the Checkpoint Threat Cloud IP reputation databases. So we can compare all the IPs that we see in the cloud with IPs that we know to be malicious in the cloud as of now. So, I mean, we have like something like 4 million IPs that are cataloged as malicious today, for example. But the nice thing is that we can immediately see again, we see the swim lanes. So we see items in here that are on the exposed part of the internet, and we see different IPs that connected to them. So we can always click on any of these, and we can get more specifics about what this is, this is a load balancer, where the load balancer is, which VPC is associated with it, what IPs are associated with it, what security groups are associated with it. All this information we can extract from the logs and sort of present to you in a nice formatted way, so you can very visually, very quickly see what has been affected by that communications in your network. Even better, we're working on something that's going to look like this. Right now, we cannot do this because we bought the company a couple of months ago, but we're already working and we have some betas of this. Once we do the checking of your system, we can see which one of those are, for example, checkpoint appliances that are looking at traffic. So in here, we can see that we have 3 checkpoint appliances. Everything that's coming from the outside is hitting those checkpoint appliances first and being filtered and then going in to my internal systems, which is awesome. That's what I want, because if something malicious is going to be blocked by the checkpoint, right? But look at this. We can automatically see something that is not going through the normal flow of traffic. And when you visualize, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, it's very visible. So you can immediately click on that and find out, hey, what is this? Why is it configured this way? Why is this bypassing my checkpoint traffic and not being inspected? So it very quickly allows you to find out if something has been misconfigured or if something has been on purpose configured to bypass the security that I may have inside of my system. So that is Magellan. Magellan is still in beta as of today. Is very advanced beta. We plan to release it in March. So it should be just a couple of weeks from being officially delivered. And that's why it says we're in preview mode right now. But the nice thing is that we can, just like everything else, we can run the Magellan reports automatically on the background, and we can set a set of alerts that say if I see any malicious IP that talks to anything in here, and that is reported on the cloud logs, send me an email or some sort of alert saying that this happened. This is, of course, historical because we're looking at the logs. So if you get an alert, it's because the logs are showing it and it's something that already happened. If we wanted to see something happening on real time as the traffic traverses your network, that would be what the Cloud Guard gateways would do. Now, you don't need one or the other. We have a lot of customers that have just the Cloud Guard gateways, and we have other customers that have just Dome9. So both solutions see different things and sort of overlap with each other in some points, but they can be deployed fully independent of one another. Last module is called IAM Safety. The most important thing in the cloud is the accounts that you use to connect to it, because those accounts are the ones that give you rights to create security groups, to change security groups, to create VMs, to attach public IPs to those VMs. And if somebody ever got a hold of the root account for your cloud, that's it. Your goose is cooked. They can do anything. They have God powers in the cloud. They can destroy all your networks. They can add VMs and servers. They can block connectivity or take away connectivity or anything that you have. And this has happened. There has been at least 2 or 3 companies that had to declare bankruptcy because their root account fell into the wrong hands. They started being asked for money, and they tried to block the intruder out. But once the intruder had a root account, it could use scripting and basically win the race. As they were trying to remove access, he was adding things that would give him access at the same time, right? So one of the things that Dome9 lets us do is sort of add what we call a lease time to a root account or any account that we believe to be important. And what that means is we are not allowing a root user to have full and unlimited access to the entire cloud for an unlimited period of time. We're saying, okay, you're a valid user. You have access to the root account. You authenticated to the AWS root account for this region. We are going to give you 5 minutes to do whatever you need to do. And after those 5 minutes, we're going to cut you off. And what this is kind of equivalent to the sudo command in a Linux system. So you're sort of leasing the super root access for a little bit of time, and then we take it away. And what that allows you to do is if somebody does get a hold of the root account and they shouldn't have it, it gives you reaction time, because all they have is 2, 3, 5, 10 minutes, whatever lease time you assign or you told Dome9 to allow. And then after that, we block that account. And they need to re-authenticate and come back in again. But by doing that, that buys us time for us to basically lock out that account, find out that something is happening that should not be happening, and actually have some reaction time and breathing room to recuperate full control of our cloud. That is called IAM Safety. And you can attach it not just to root accounts, you can attach it to pretty much any account that you see. And you choose which accounts you want to be protected and which ones accounts you don't. We normally recommend it to root accounts because those are the most powerful accounts, but it's up to you to even use this or not. The big bulk of customers use the first 2 items, the network security that tells me visually how exposed my cloud is, and the compliance and continuous compliance and rule building. So that we sell or license together. And then optionally, you can license the other two, the Magellan visual reporting and the IM safety module. The question that I usually get at this point is how does the licensing work? The licensing is annual and is based on the number of assets that you need protected. Now,
Gus, before we get in the licensing, can you go back to that account screen that we're just looking at?
Just
there?
like that, yep.
The does your tool have the ability to tell us? There may be accounts in there that we just don't know what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So we further need to apply some sort of lease or protection associated with those accounts. Can it tell us what these accounts typically do to give us a sense of them?
Dome9 directly, I don't. I'm not sure. I don't believe so. But you can see the account. You can see that Dome9 is not protecting it right now, and you can go into AWS and then find out what that account does. You can click on that account and look at the policy for it. What you can do is if you see an account that you don't know or recognize, you can protect it temporarily while you find out what it is. And then if it's perfectly fine, then you can unprotect it because you say, like, okay, I know what that is. It's, it doesn't have a lot of rights, or it's being used by this or that, and it doesn't need to have any special level of protection.
And then the level of protections you have, is that something that would get defined in the restricted policy?
Yes. You can create multiple policies, and you can have, so for example, you can say, okay, if it's a root account, I want my lease window to be just 5 minutes, because most everybody that's doing a change can do a change in 5 minutes if they have a root account. But for something else, you may have a different sort of restricted policy. In most cases, however, we don't do a lot of control in here other than lease time. Because that's the main protection that we're giving you. We're just giving you, again, breathing room in case any of these accounts is found to be compromised at one point. Okay. Sorry, I was in the main screen and I was talking real quick about what is important for licensing. Yes.
Right.
You may or may not be doing containers, for example. I don't know if or not. We don't care about containers. We don't care about security groups. We don't care about load balancers. We only care about instances and about databases. So we would ask how many instances or databases you have on the average for the year. And we know it's not an exact number. We know, again, that cloud changes every week. It changes every day. So you say, well, roughly we have maybe 120 assets in our cloud, or roughly we have 500 or 700. So that's the license that we will give you. We'll give you a license for, say, 700 assets. And the license is non-blocking. So if you happen to grow to 800, it's not a big deal. Everything will still work the same way. We will still report and give you continuous compliance and all that, but you might get a little alert that says you are continuously exceeding month after month your 700 item license. Please, reach out to us, basically, is what it would say. And then at the end of the year, when it's time to renew, then we would say, is 700 still where you are at? Or do you want to, you're now at 500, so you don't need as many licenses to be renewed for the full 7? Or, okay, we went up to 1,000, so we're going to extend our license to include all the 1,000 that are now. You do not need to enroll all your accounts in AWS. We have a customer that has about 20,000 instances, but they only cared about 5,000 of those. Those are the ones that they wanted. So they just added the AWS accounts for those 5,000. And the other AWS accounts are not protected by Dome9. And that is fine. We don't force you to protect your entire network, just the accounts that you want. If you want to add a new account, you see these little plus signs here in the dashboard. You just click on that little plus sign, and then we ask you, okay, do you want to add a new AWS account? Do you want to add it as read-only? Do you want to add it as read-write? Remember, if it's read-only, we can give you alarms. We can say, hey, we saw something. We cannot do anything about it, but this is what we saw. If you do read write, then you have the option of saying, okay, this is my golden master. If you see anything change, I want you to revert back to my golden master. Or if you see something that's violating the compliance, I want to run this cloud bots to fix the compliance. Then you would be adding the account as read write. Again, it's up to you. You can add some as read write and some as read only. You can have all of them as read only, all of them as read write, and you get to control what happens when it's read write. You pick which cloud bots you want to run. We give you a long list of bots that are very popular. Like, for example, if something should be tagged and it's not tagged, we may have a robot that says, if you see anything that's not tagged, tag it as needs to be tagged or something like that, and alert people. And then you can have if you have checkpoint cloud guard inside of your cloud, you can say anything that has a tag that says temporary or needs to be retagged is only limited to connecting to these things, because you can do rules based on tags at that level. So that is pretty much the 50,000 foot view. This dashboard is fully configurable. You can put in here the compliance reports that are important to you. So this could be, NIST 800, this could be FedRAMP, this could be agency best practices. And at all times, you can see what the continuous compliance is showing you in the dashboard. If you need to be notified, you can be notified on the dashboard. You can be notified via email. You can be notified by an SNMP trap. We can fire up an AWS SNS report, trigger. So there's a lot of ways to do that alerting and notification and reporting. Let me see, I got some of the types here. So say with alerts console, send something to the AWS Security Hub, send an email, schedule an email that has a report of everything that I found and get sent every Friday, or do an SNS notification that's attached to it. So that is it. That's in a nutshell. Oh, the last thing. This is a cloud service because what we have is we have an engine that is querying AWS to create all these reports. The cloud engine is currently based in the United States in AWS, and that is where it runs today. Since it is a cloud engine, we understand that it needs to be FedRAMP compliant. We are in the process of negotiating FedRAMP compliance for this engine. Today, there is no other product that does this that is FedRAMP compliant. The closest one is Evident.io and Redlock, which are neither of which is FedRAMP compliant today. But what we wanted to say is, if SSA is interested in testing, and you can of course test it, not necessarily against your operational network if you don't want to, but you can create a side AWS account and start playing with this and what it can do. I believe that you can use it to spot check non-continuous compliance. You can run a report every quarter, every month without having this to be FedRAMP compliant. But if you do have it connected 100% of the time, it would need to be. So what we would like to say is, if you're interested in the product, if you like it, and you want to be a sponsor, that would let us achieve FedRAMP compliance in about half the time that it's going to take us right now. And you're not obligated to buy the product after we're FedRAMP compliant. It doesn't cost you a cent to sponsor us. And if you sponsor us, it does give you a voice on the product. So you say, this is a specific need that SSA has, and we want the compliant version of this product to do something about that need. So you can basically guide the FedRAMP certification and make sure that it has things that are specifically important for SSA. That is the end of the demo, and I am open to any questions that you may have.
So how we would install this is basically, this is something that is within AWS now. We would just activate.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So that was like one of our questions was, if this if our VPC is only accessed internally, how does this get access into that? And then that's the question there.
Okay, yeah, we don't access your networks at all. All we would do is we basically connect to AWS, the cloud, the big cloud, and say, we want to query these accounts. And then we can actually do an API call, and AWS will give us an API response that says that account has this number of instances, this number of security groups, this is how the security groups are configured, and so on and so on. But we never touch your actual account.
And are you only in AWS? Are you also in Dynamics?
The only 3 accounts that we can query today are AWS, Azure, and Google. We are going to be adding perhaps Oracle Cloud next. One of the things that a lot of people are asking about is in Magellan. They say, hey, we love the fact that you can do this visually, and we know that you're using logs to build this. Can you use just the AWS logs, or can you do the AWS logs plus all these logs that we have in Splunk, or these logs that we have, the sys logs that we have here, so we can see how on-prem also is connecting to my cloud, right? So we don't have that today, but it's fairly easy to do. All we have to do is be able to connect to those log servers. So that's something that we're looking at adding in the future. But today, the first thing is make sure that it's released on AWS, which is going to happen next month. Then on Azure logs, and that's going to be maybe in the next 3 months after that. And then Google, and then we're going to look at the private logs on-prem that people want to add. Again, things like ArcSight, Splunk, or syslog servers.
Hey, did you say the competitors was a RedLock solution?
The 2 competitors today that most approximate this are Evident.io. Evident.io does the compliant piece, and RedLock is basically something like Magellan, like the visualization of the connections. So we basically do both things in one product, but that is the closest thing to us today. Yes. And by the way, we scale a lot better. We have customers that started with Evident.io or RedLock and say, hey, we need to get access to, we started in AWS, but we need access to this other thing, or we now have 1.5 million VMs, and we need to be able to scale that big. So scalability is one of the things that we do kind of better than they do, and remediation. RedLock, for example, can show you the reports and can show you this, but it cannot remediate automatically. You with CloudBots, if you have continuous remediation, if you see something, you can fire up that automatic thing that will go ahead and fix it. So we do have a lot of things that we do today that we believe are better than the competitors today. Last thing, again, we don't use any agents. Some people have things like Cloud Passage or something that is agent-based because it's looking at the workloads. We don't look at the workloads. We don't require you to have any agents on any of your servers. Again, all we're doing is querying AWS in the background. So it's also non-impact. You can do this on a fully operational network. We don't impact the traffic. We don't impact your VMs, because all we're doing is our engine is querying the AWS engine in the background. That's it.
And Gus, what's your slide and scale on licensing again? Is it what 1 to 200? How does that?
Yes. Today, if at the low end, we license in groups of 100. Again, we don't look at security policies. We don't look at load balancers, or we look at instances and databases. So at the very low end, for 100 items that need to be protected, our licensing is about $19K. But if you have 20,000 instances, we don't charge you the same thing. So don't extrapolate that in an infinite way. Depending on the number of items that you have, if it tells you have 1,000, then we'll give you a quote for 1,000. If you want a budget roughly using that $19K per 100, you can, but the pricing will go down as your instance number goes up.
Would you send me a quote for up to 1,000, just so I have that in my back pocket?
Okay. We will go ahead and we will do that.
Yeah, just if you can just put that in an email form, that'll give me something to sort of, put my mind around. And
Sounds
then
good.
as you said, just use 19K per 100 as the start point.
Sounds good.
What I want to do is I want to think on this, chew on it, and I need to have some conversations with some other groups here, and sort of pick their brains on this, and then circle back to you as needed. We might need to arrange this presentation for another group.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure that you'll be okay with that.
Oh, of course. And what I recommend is if you're interested, do create a dummy AWS account that's completely separate from your regular accounts, and we can go ahead and link Dome9 to that. And then you can play, you can create rules, you can see, oh, I wonder if it's going to do this, and you can test it out. So that way, we'll give you the full enterprise capability for X number of days. Some people need a month, others need a couple of months. That's fine. And we can help you as well. You say, oh, we need to build a rule that, tags all these instances like this, or make sure that, nobody does this. And we can usually help you during the POC to do things like that. But yes, if you need me to present to another group, that's fine. If you would like me to send you the instructions on how to register a dummy AWS account to play with, I can do that as well. Again, it's very easy. I can send you a link with all the steps. And once you register that account that you want to use for testing, just reach out to us and we'll enable the full enterprise feature set. So that way you can play with everything, basically.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. Yeah. For now, would you just you have an email thread? Just shoot back to Jason and I a quote for 1,000, and if it's a ROM, that's fine.
Okay.
And I'll reach out to some folks here, and then we'll communicate by email if I can drum up some interest from them to have a look at this.
Excellent. Okay. Sounds good.
Jason and Joe, you got anything else for Gus?
I'm good.
I don't. Excuse me, I don't.
All right, thank you so much. It was a very good presentation. It's very interesting.
Okay. Anytime. You guys have my email, so any questions that you did not think of right now, feel free to send over the email, and I'll gladly answer it when I get it.
Is it possible to get a link to to this presentation?
We recorded it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'll send you guys a recording so you can see it again anytime you want.
That would be awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Hey, have a good
Thanks, guys.
Hey, have a nice rest of the day.
You too.
Thank you.